Hey guys, welcome back. Hope everybody had a fairly good weekend. So this week in ecology, we are going to be focusing on the second section of our unit, which is going to be going over energy consumption. So today we're going to be starting on lesson 4. We went ahead and wrapped up the first section last week. We did those 3 lessons. So this week I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. So what I'm going to do, instead of giving you guys concept like review questions every single lesson, what I'm going to do is just create one Google Doc, and it's going to be asking questions over everything that we learned this week. What we're going to do this week, I'll be posting today, which is Monday, and then I'll be posting on Wednesday. So today we're going to be going over, and you'll see in a minute, we're going to be going over the history of energy consumption. And then Wednesday we will be going over present global energy usage and then future energy needs. So what I'm going to do today, I'll have you guys listen obviously to the video, and then I'm going to go ahead and put your Google Docs up with all of the questions for this week. Obviously, you won't be able to finish it all in one day because it's going to go over questions that pertain to Wednesday's lesson. So we're only going to have 2 lessons this week, and we'll make sure that we only have 2, okay? There won't be any surprises in there. So you'll kind of work on that. You can work on it tomorrow if you just want to listen to the video today, and then start working on your questions tomorrow, which is going to be Tuesday. That's fine with me. And then again, you can watch the second video, which is going to be over lesson 5 on Wednesday, and then after that you should be able to finish up all the questions. So this way you don't have a bunch of different documents to keep up with. You can just turn them all in whenever you're done. So you could be done as soon as Wednesday and turn your assignment in for the week. That being said, we're still going to be doing our discussion post. So if you do finish up early with the assignment and turn it in on Wednesday, just make sure you're still doing the discussion post so you keep active on Google Classroom. So that is the plan for this week, and that's probably how I'm going to do it from now on. So hopefully that works for everybody. Okay, so this lesson, we're going to be going over lesson 4, has to do with the human history of energy consumption. So pretty much all that we're going to learn, hopefully that glare isn't too bad, but pretty much everything that we're going to learn is summarized here in your I can statements. So after this lesson, you should be able to summarize the history of energy consumption in the developed world, and this is going to include the Industrial Revolution, exponential growth, and the energy crisis. So that is what we are going to be learning about today. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start off with the Industrial Revolution. So I zoomed it in a little bit. Hopefully you guys are able to see this okay. If not, I still posted the actual slides onto Google Classroom. And again, I'll be doing that with each of the lessons so you can go back and reference them without having to find the certain spot in the video where we went over them. Okay. So the history of human energy consumption, we are starting with the Industrial Revolution, which I'm sure you guys have gone over in your history classes, but we are going to see particularly how it has impacted energy consumption globally and how it has impacted the environment. So the Industrial Revolution was a period from around 1750 to 1850 where changes in agriculture, manufacturing, mining, transportation, and technology, so all things that we've learned about already. We've learned about agriculture, mining, transportation, and so as we kind of go through each of those, remember the environmental effects that each has had on certain ecosystems. So remember we talked a little bit about mining and agriculture and transportation infrastructure. We really went over that in the weeks before we got called off of school. But anyways, so these experienced a lot of changes during this time. And so they had a profound effect on the social, economic, and cultural conditions of the times. And the Industrial Revolution, it began in the United Kingdom, where then subsequently spread throughout the world in Western Europe, North America, Japan, and then, eventually the rest of the world. So the Industrial Revolution marked a major turning point in history. And it was in almost every aspect of daily life that this was influenced. So on the slide, you'll be able to see once you open up the PowerPoint, but it shows a guy working at his desk, and all of these changes are going on around him. And it kind of asks in what ways is that change in everyday life shown here. So that's kind of what I want you to think about throughout this lesson. Imagine you were born in that time period, or you're growing up in that time period. What kind of changes would you see that were very drastic to the type of life that you knew before versus the type of life that is coming, and how it's going to change within your lifetime? So just keep that in mind as we go throughout. Okay, so again, during the Industrial Revolution, there were tons of changes in agriculture, manufacturing, mining, transportation, and they didn't list this, but there was also major changes in textiles, which is kind of like making fabrics for clothing or household uses, stuff like that. So in addition to the improvements in the textile making, two other major developments helped to drive the Industrial Revolution. The first was the use of coal in the steel-making process. And then the second was the development of the steam engine, which ultimately ran on coal. So our two major developments, the use of coal in steel-making, and then the development of the steam engine. So within this time, mechanical work and raw building materials became significantly more available, and this had eventually allowed other advancements to take place. So during the Industrial Revolution, this kind of advanced at a very rapid pace, okay? Which it does have some benefits, but it also has some downfalls, because the people at the time, they were enjoying the benefits. They were able to travel more places with the steam engine. Again, they had more available resources to them, but they also did not know the long-term impact that this would have. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and look at the human population growth, and you'll kind of see how the Industrial Revolution tied in with all of that. So we have a chart here, and I'll explain that in a minute, but it says here that human population growth was tied together with increased use of natural and man-made resources. So remember how I said that during the Industrial Revolution, they experienced a time where they had a lot of resources available to them, okay? So it shows here in this graph, it's pretty much the population of humans throughout centuries, okay? So it starts here around 1800, and remember that the Industrial Revolution started in 1750 and it lasted around 1850. So we don't see a huge exponential increase in the human population around 1950. Okay, so around 1960 was when we reached 3 billion people. 1974, we reached 4 billion people. In 87, we saw 5 billion. 1999, 6 billion. And then in 2011, we saw 7 billion. Now, it says on here to Google the current population, but I went ahead and did that for you. Our current population as of April 2020 is around 7.8 billion people. So it's kind of a timeline here of the human population growth. So there has been an enormous increase in the global demand for energy. Obviously, if you've got a larger population, you're going to need more energy to provide for all of those people. Okay. So in recent years, it was a result of both the industrial development and the population growth. Okay, so when you have a growing population, and now because of the Industrial Revolution, you kind of have a means to make things work. You have more technology available to your population. It's going to result in a higher demand for energy. So, as we'll see, the supply of energy is often less than the actual demand. So, when our supply of energy is less than our demand, meaning more people really need all this energy and we just do not have enough, that is when we are going to see what is called an energy crisis. So, human population growth definitely ties into the energy crisis. So again, when there is a dramatic rise in price due to a short supply of energy resources, so whatever energy you need, you are not able to afford, this is when an energy crisis results. So there have been a number of energy crises of notable scale in recent decades. So these have often been tracked to temporary causes, whether that be strikes, wars, pipeline damages, severe weather, terrorist events, regime changes, and even cold winters. These can all be tied back to an energy crisis. And I'm thinking probably on Thursday. I might do it on Tuesday. I'll probably link some actual articles that have to do with the energy crisis so you guys can check those out if you are interested in that. So moving on with this energy crisis, the U.S. Department of Energy indicated that the problem associated with, for example, world oil production peaking, this was due to the supplies running out. It won't be temporary, and past energy crisis experience will provide relatively little guidance. So kind of what that is saying, we've experienced energy crisis situations before, but in the case of the world oil production peaking, and it's because it's not temporary, and it's something very new to us. The energy crisis experiences that we've had in the past, we won't be able to use what we've learned from that and apply it to what is happening now. Okay, so the final thing that we are going to look at today is just kind of like a timeline of energy resources and how they have been used, over time. So again, remember that our Industrial Revolution started around 1750 and lasted until 1850. What we can see right here is when we kind of see our first bit of growth within our material. So we'll see specifically here that wood started to rise in consumption. You'll also see in 1850 we talked about the consumption of coal for the steel making and steam engines. This is where it kind of makes its place onto the timeline, was around 1850. Now coal, obviously it hasn't reached its peak yet. In fact, none of these resources have really reached their peak yet. They just kind of keep exponentially growing. But we saw one of the peaks was in around 1900 to 1925, probably closer to 1923. It fell again in between 1925 and right before 1950 it peaked again. And ever since then it's just kind of been rising and falling a little bit, but steadily rising. And then around 1900 is where petroleum made its mark on the timeline, and then petroleum has just kind of exponentially grown since then. It hit a pretty big peak around in the 70s, and it fell a little bit, but then it's on the rise again. Let's see, natural gas, again, it made its way onto the timeline around the same time that petroleum did. Didn't have quite as large of an exponential growth as petroleum did, but still it was up there. And then you'll see down here we have hydroelectric power and nuclear electric power. Now, it looks like hydroelectric power made its way here in the probably the mid 1930s, I would say. Yeah, I would say so. And then nuclear electric power really didn't come in until the 1950s. But still, you can see here that these didn't have quite the exponential growth that all of the others did. Okay. And again, none of these have hit a significant peak yet in terms of how much we've used them. I mean, they have had their peaks, but if you look over here, they just seem to keep growing. Okay. So there's no current decline on that.